Chapter 2, The Pond. The pond Sam had discovered on the spring morning was seldom visited by any human being. All winter, snow had covered the ice. The pond lay cold and still under its white blanket. Most of the time there wasn't a sound to be heard. The frog was asleep, the chipmunk was asleep. Occasionally the jay would cry out, and sometimes at night the fox would bark a high rasping bark. Winter seemed to live forever, but one day a change came over the woods. In the pond, warm air, soft and kind, blew through the trees. The ice, which had sung during the night, began to melt. Patches of open water appeared. All the glad creatures lived in the pond in the woods. All the creatures that lived in the pond in the woods were glad to feel warmth. They heard and felt the breath of spring, and they stared with new life and hope. There was a good new smell in the air, a smell of earth waking after its long sleep. The frog, buried in the mud at the bottom of the pond, knew that spring was here. The chickadee was delighted. Almost every thing delights a chickadee. The vixen dozing in the vixen dozing in her den. She would soon have kittens. Every creature knew that a better Easter time was to hand warmer days, pleasanter nights. Trees were putting out green buds. The buds were swelling. Birds began arriving from the south. A pair of ducks flew in the red-winged blackbird arrived and scouted the pond for nesting sites. A small sparrow with a white throat arrived and sang, "Oh, sweet Canada, Canada, Canada." And if you had been sitting by the pond on that first warm day of spring, suddenly toward the end of the afternoon, you would have heard a stirring sound high above you in the air, a sound like the sound of a trumpet. Co-ho, 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 co-ho. And if you had looked up, you would have seen high overhead 2 great white birds. They flew swiftly. Their legs stretched out straight behind. Their long white necks stretched out ahead. Their powerful wings beating steady and strong. Go, 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 go. A thrilling noise in the sky. The trumpeting of swans. When the birds spotted the pond, they began circling, looking for a place over the air. Then they fluttered down and came to rest in the water, folding their long wings neatly along their sides and turning their heads this way and that to study their new surroundings. They were trumpeter swans, pure white birds. Whoa. Okay. The black bills, they had liked the looks of the swampy pond and had decided to make it in their home for a while and raise a family. The 2 swans were tired from the long flight. They were glad to be down out of the sky. They paddled slowly about and then began feeding, thrusting their nets into the shallow water and pulling the roots and plants from the bottom. Everything about the swans was white except their bills and their feet. These were black. They carried their heads high. The pond seemed a different place because of their arrival. For the next few days, the swans rested. When they were hungry, they ate. When they were thirsty, which was a great deal of the time, they drank on the 10th day. The female began looking around to find a place to build her nest. In the spring of the year, nest building is uppermost in a bird's mind. It is the most important thing there is. If she picks a good place, she stands a good chance of hatching her eggs and rearing her young. If she picks a poor place, she may fail to raise a family. The female swan knew this. She knew that the decision she was making was extremely important. The two swans first investigated the upper end of the pond where the stream flowed slowly in it. It was pleasant there. The reeds and bulrushes, red-winged blackbirds were busy nesting in this part of the pond, and a pair of miller ducks were courting them. The swans swam to the lower end of the pond in a marsh with woods on the other side. A deer meadow on the other. It was a lonely here from one shore to a point of and extended out into the pond. It was sandy strip, like a little peninsula at the tip of it, a few feet out into the water was a teeny island, hardly bigger than a dining table. One small tree grew on the island, and there were rocks and ferns and grasses. "Take a look at this," exclaimed the female as she swam around and around. "Go-ho," replied her husband, who liked to have someone to ask his advice. The swan stepped cautiously out into the island. The spot seemed made in order to just right for a nest in place. While the male swam floated close by, watching, she snooped about until she found a pleasant spot on the ground. She sat down to see how it felt to be sitting there. She decided it was the right size for her body. It was nicely located a couple of feet from the water's edge. Very convalescent, she turned to her husband. "What do you think?" she said. "An ideal location," he replied. "A perfect place, and I will tell you why it is a perfect place," she continued majestically. "If an enemy, a fox or a coon, or a coyote or a skunk, when it reached a spot with murder in the heart, he'd have to enter the water and get wet. And before he could enter the water, he'd have to walk to the whole length of that point of land. And by that time, we'd see him or hear him, and we would give him a hard time." The male stretched out his great wings 8 feet from tip to tip, and gave the water a mighty cloud to show his strength. This made him feel better right away. When the trumpeter swan hits an enemy with his wing, is like being hit by a basketball bat. A male swan, by the way, is called a cob. No one knows why, but that's what he's called. A good many animals have special names. A male goose is called a garter. A male cow is called a bull, and a male sheep is called a ram. A male chicken is called a rooster, and so on. Anyway, the thing is to remember that a male swan is called a cob. The cob's wife pretended not to notice that her husband was showing off, but he saw it all right, and she was proud of his strength and his courage. As husbands go, he was a good one. The cob watched his beautiful wife sitting there on the teeny island. To his great joy, he saw her begin to turn slowly around and around, keeping always in the same spot, treading the mud and grass. She was making the first motions of nesting. First, she squatted down in the place she had chosen. Then she twisted around and around, tamping with the earth with her broad-webbed feet, howling in out to make it like a sucker. Then she reached out and pulled twigs and grasses toward her. And dropped them at her sides and under her tail. Sat in the nest they were by. The cob floated close to his mate. He studied every move she made. Now another medium-sized stick, my love, he said, and he spoke to her splendid, long, white, graceful neck as far as it would go. Picked up a stick and placed it at her side. Now another bit of coarse grass, said the cob with great dignity. The female reached for grasses, for moss and twigs. Anything that was handy. Slowly, carefully, he built up the nest until she was sitting on a big grassy mound. He worked at the task for a couple of hours, then knocked off for the day and slid into the pond again to take a drink and have lunch. A fine start, said the cob as he gazed back at the nest. A perfect beginning. I don't know how you managed. It's so clever. It comes naturally, replied his wife. There's a lot of work to do to it, but on the whole, it is pleasant work. Yes, said the cob, and when you are done, you have something to show for your trouble. You have a swan's nest 6 feet across. What other bird can say that? Well, said his wife, maybe an eagle can say it. Yes, but in that case, it wouldn't be a swan's nest. It would be an eagle's nest. It would be high up in some old dead tree somewhere instead of right down near the water with all the convent to go with water. They both laughed at this. Then they began trumpeting and splashing and scooping up water and throwing down their backs, darting about as though they had suddenly gone crazy with delight. Go ho, go ho, go ho, they cried. Every wild creature within a mile and a half from the pond heard the trumpeting of the swans. The fox heard, the raccoon heard, the skunk. One pair of ears heard that did not belong to the wild creature, but the swans did not know that. And at the end of the chapter, look.
There we go.